Welcome back everyone to part 20 of the Ultima RS build. Sit tight. This week we're focusing on fueling. Another day in the Dean den. I'm just content. I'm like a dog who's got the bone. Well, anyway, talking about dogs, the temperature has dropped and Roofy, he is no longer lying on the floor overheating. He's out in the garden playing with his caterpillar. So that's why he isn't in this intro. Well, this week we're going to be focusing on the fitting of the fuel tanks. And that will involve senders, hangers, painting the back of the fuel tanks, and actually a very, very chilled episode. Now, RS condition back there, I've put it on a 2, but to be honest, it's a 1. And I'm going to do some more unwrapping of the box because we haven't done that for a couple of episodes. And the day is coming. It won't be long before my baby will be going back to the Ultima factory to have that beautiful composite body shell fitted. Anyway, none of that dreaming. What we're going to do is we're just going to go and unwrap. Unwrapping time again. We haven't done this for a while, so I thought I would unwrap the fuel tank boxes. Well, the fuel tanks come in 2 boxes. One box, which I've already opened, I'll be honest with you, just has a fuel tank in it. But this box, this has a fuel tank and all the components to do the installation. And you heard me right. This car has got 2 fuel tanks, one on the left, one on the right. And that's for 2 very good reasons. 1, weight distribution. 2, there's not enough room to just put one big tank in this car because it's so tightly packed that there's just physically nowhere to put a monster tank. So, let me get unwrapping. Peek the penknife. And listen for the cutting of the Ultima tape. So let me just put the box over here. First, we have 2, 1, 2, and what these are is fuel senders. So what these do is these actually sit in the tank and, measure the height of the fluid in the tank, or the petrol. So what I'm going to do is I'm not going to explain now how they work. I'll do that in a bit. So we have 2 of those. Next, we have 2 of these high density foam shaped thingies. And what this does is these bridge the gap between the fuel tank and the bodywork. And they actually make that a really tight seal. Now I'm not going to need these until the bodywork's fitted. So those are just going to be put to one side. What next? These are nice. Now, when you deal with anything petrol related, the actual tubes have to be petrol resistant. And this is fairly expensive stuff. And what this does, it goes from the filler part of the fuel tank all the way up to actually the cap that sits on the bodywork. And of course, we have 2 of these formed perfectly to the right angles. So that's 1, 2. Next, here we have 2 funnels. Now what these do, let me open this up. Two Jubilee clips for each, and that is obviously to go over these. Tight, beautiful fit as you'd expect. And then here, well, that's the gasket that goes onto the bodywork. And here is basically the filling funnel. And what else have we? Okay, so this tank fitting kit. In here we have expanding foam. This is to make a seal around the tanks. We also have threaded bar. And what this does is actually allows the tank to hang, and I'll show you that later, off the chassis. And then more pop rivets, more stainless steel set screws and riv nuts. So again, as you'd expect, everything to do with the installation. What else have we got in here? Fuel fillers. 2 of them. Yep, there's one either side of the car. And let me just open these up. Now, I remember when I fitted these to my GTR. Lovely bit of kit, these. Right, let's just have a close-up look at this lovely fuel filler cap here. Obviously we get 2, as I said previously, but it's made of aluminium. It's anodized in like a satin black. Nice little lock there, and 2 keys are provided. Quite funky little keys actually. And then we have the Ultima branding, which is just beautiful. It's etched into the aluminium and then finished white, so it's not a sticker or anything. And then to open it, you pull this little lever up and then rotate 90 degrees and it comes off. And then if I get the funnel, which I showed you earlier, all this does is this sits on top of the funnel like so. There are 2 gaskets. One goes, if you can imagine, goes between the funnel and the bodywork, and the bodywork sits here, and then another gasket, and then this on top. And what's really nice, what's provided, is these stainless steel countersunk set screws that sit beautifully in these countersunk holes. And I tell you what, putting this on, it's like jewellery when you put these on the car, which I can't do today, I'm afraid, but I'll do in the future. So that's the fuel filler. Let me put that to one side. I think the last piece is the fuel tank itself, which is here. Now, this is made of aluminium, of course. Quite a light bit of kit, actually. And what we're going to do, let's cut off all this bubble wrap. So just bear with me. So here we have the passenger fuel tank. Quite a complex design, all welded, aluminium construction. And what we have here is this flanged with threaded holes for mounting the fuel sender. We then have the main inlet for filling the tank. And on the rear we have 1, 2, 3, and these are threaded unions which are to take -6 AN connectors, which I'll show you in a little picture up on the right. So the first thing we're going to do with the fuel tank is we're going to mount the fuel sender. What we have here is one of the fuel senders fitted to the Ultima RS, 1 in each tank. Now, these are manufactured by VDO, a quality manufacturer that have produced measuring equipment, instrumentation, senders for the automotive industry for decades. Now, this type of fuel sender is known as a dip type. Sounds a bit odd, doesn't it? But how this works is, inside this tube is a float. And what that float does is, if you can imagine, as the fuel fills up in the tank, that float sits on the surface of the fuel. Nothing complicated really. And the position of that float is then translated into a resistance. Now, the resistance is measured in ohms, and when it's at the top of its travel, so when the tank is full, you're just going to get a handful of ohms, maybe 3, 4, something like that. At the bottom, it's going to be about 100 ohms. Now, using Ohm's law, wow, that's going back to my O-level physics, what that is that resistance actually is translated into a current. And as you can imagine, that current is then fed to the fuel gauge, which then translates it to the movement of the actual arm of the gauge, or if it's an LED array, where the LEDs are. And what I'll do is, just over here, I will show you a schematic. As the fuel goes down in the fuel tank, you can see the actual fuel gauge goes down as well. So there we go. So the first job to do is to fit this to the fuel tank. As I explained earlier, here is the flange to attach the fuel sender to the tank, and it's pretty simple actually. All that happens is it's slotted down to the mating surface and then attached using 5 stainless steel set screws that are supplied by Ultima. Also supplied with the sender are 2 little spade connectors, actually male spade connectors. One with the smaller hole fits on the output from the sender here, and the one with the larger hole that goes on one of these 5 set screws as the earth for the tank. Next, to ensure that the surface between the tank and the sender is completely fuel proof, we have this supplied rubber gasket, and then also I have purchased some Hylamar blue. Now, there's one thing that you have to be very, very careful of when you're actually attaching this sender to the tank, and that is these holes are not evenly spaced. And the way to ensure that you get them correct is to rotate the sender, and you will see they will only fit in one location. Now I'm going to tip the tank up here. I don't know if you can see this. So you can see all the holes, they line up there perfectly. That is the correct orientation. But if I rotate this to the next, you can see this hole here and this hole here, they're not lined up perfectly. So it's almost like a safe. So you have to rotate, and there you go. Everything matches up. And interestingly, the VDO brand is actually on the outside of this tank. But what I would do is I would double check that before you bolt them in, because what will happen if you try and force those set screws in, if they don't line up, you're just going to make a real mess. So let's take this out. And then the next thing you have to do, you can see here this bright yellow sort of sticker really. It's saying Achtung. It's saying you got to move that sticker, because underneath it, let me show you, if we peel this off, and I'm going to go away from, I'm going to move away from these two holes, but I don't know, can you see, I don't know if you can, there's a tiny pin in there, and that pin is actually stopping the float going up and down during transit. And I don't know if you can see that, it is tiny. And if you forget to take that out and build the car, your fuel gauge is going to show full all the time. So there we go. So we've taken that out. Now let's get some of this Hylamar blue. Now, what you have to do, you don't need lots of this, but basically apply it and make sure you go around those holes, both sides. There we go. It's like icing a cake, this. There we go. Like so. And then I'm just going to check the gasket for its orientation before I put it on and make a real mess. So the gasket has a tiny little, I don't know if you can see that. Can you see that? It's like a little sort of half round moon there. Now that actually lines up with the VDO brand there. So I know that this goes on like so. And I'm right, they all line up.
Live your life within the moment, and don't go wait until the morning. You never know when it is over. All that I know is...
And actually there's something I should have told you what to do, okay? Before you do any of this, you want to cover this up. That's my error there, because you do not want anything falling in that tank. And then if I pop that up, you can see there we have the two electrical connections next to one another for the loom, and then the 5 set screws all tightened down, and there's a small little Hylamar, a bit of Hylamar that's oozed out, which is fine. So let's just get a paper towel and just wipe that. Okay, I'm going to do a before and after for you here so you can sort of appreciate what I'm trying to do next. Now, with the fuel tanks, what you have to do is protect certain parts of the fuel tank that are really not exposed. So you can't really get to them to clean them in the engine bay. And as you can see here, this is a fresh fuel tank that I've just put the sender in. all finished just in raw aluminium. And here is one I masked and sprayed earlier, which I'm going to show you, but I just want to demonstrate what areas I've painted. So the end, underneath, and the other end. And also, if you look on this side, this is actually behind a chassis member, because these are the flanges the tank sits on, and you can see I've sprayed along there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how I do that, how I mask it, and how I spray it in my little spray booth outside. And the paint I use, recommended by Ultima, is this here. It is satin black tough paint, and I must say it's really good. It goes on really, really well. Doesn't need a primer, but you do need to key the surface, which I'll show you how to do in a minute. But this is great stuff. I got these on Amazon. I think it was like £7 each. But make sure you get the right stuff, because you've got to learn from other people's lessons. And if Ultima say it works, I can say it works as well. Okay. Good. So what we need to do now is, I've got some 600 grit here. Now what we need to do, I know this can be a bit scary if you've never done this before, but what you need to do is put a key. So lots of little scratches basically onto the surface. Now what I tend to do now is, on all those surfaces I sanded, there's a dust. We want to get rid of that dust to ensure that paint really clings on well. Now you can get special sprays, that actually solvents that actually take all that off. I've used petrol in the past, but what I'm going to do is use some brake cleaner. It just needs something that is going to evaporate very quickly. And maybe someone out there is going to say you shouldn't use brake cleaner, but I find it works very well. So now, let me just set up the Dean spray booth and I'll see you outside. Bye. So here we are, half an hour later, and it's all dried. And I must say, the finish on this is beautiful. It's like a satin black. It matches my Ultima watch perfectly. But anyway, let's peel off the masking tape and just see if I've got any bleed through on the lines. Let's go.
Live your life within the moment, and don't go wait until the morning. You never know when it is over. All that I know is we'll get older. So let us dance this night away.
Ready to fit the tanks to the car. Well, to be precise, this is just really a pre-fit, because the tanks get permanently fitted once the side pods are bonded onto the car. And of course, I can't do that because I haven't got the bodywork. However, in preparation for the pre-fit, what I can do is I can temporarily set up the tanks. There it is, fuel tank pre-fit complete. Now I do appreciate it's only being held in by 2 skin pins and this threaded bar here, this hanger. But remember, this is just a pre-fit because this can't be permanently fitted until that side pod is actually put on the car. Now, it looks pretty cool, doesn't it? And if you imagine, the side pod has a huge air take here. So you can actually see this through the side of the car unless you have those amazing carbon scoops, which I might be just tempted. So there's not a lot more I can do before this goes for a body pre-fit. There's a couple of episodes I can film, but it won't be long now. It won't be long now, and it's going off to the factory to get clothed. Anyway, in a moment I'm going to do some Q&A, and in there's a couple of questions about bodywork, about fitment, about pre-fitting, and I'll explain the whole process and what options are open to builders if you're international or even if you're just local in good old Blighty. Your options are still there for you. So I think I'm just going to do a bit of spannering.
Leaving this place, the sun's about to break. You're riding shotgun. The feeling we chase. I'm wide awake. Take me away now. 'Cause I won't go down the same old path again now. No, I've been running out of air, so let me catch my breath. Feeling I've got's making me crazy. If I'm having a good time, don't you blame me. Yeah, this feeling I've got's making me crazy, making me crazy. So I'm just gonna drive. I'm just gonna drive. I'm just gonna drive.
Hello everyone, Q&A time here again. The spannering for this episode is over and I've got Roofy Doof. I've got Ultima treats over there, and on this piece of paper here I've got some questions from you, the viewers. Some questions come from this channel, others through social media, and some via email. So let me just give Roofy Doof an Ultima treat. Oh, God, blimey, Roofy. Here we go. And I'll move on to the first question. Is that good? Is that good? Right. Does the RS come with the bodywork included on the first delivery? Well, most people, and this is the way Ultima really prefer to provide the kit of parts, take everything in one go. What I mean is pack A, pack B, all the options, so basically everything is delivered in one drop. Now clearly if you're an international customer and all these components are being shipped halfway across the world, it makes complete sense because transport isn't cheap nowadays. And what I'll do is I'll put a picture up here as you can see how international customers receive their car. Imagine that being on your drive. Well, if you live in Blighty, like me, then really you can still take everything in one go if you wish. And to a lot of people that makes complete sense. And the only reason I've gone for like a double drop, so to speak, is I needed room in my garage to do all this filming. I really could have put the body shell here, but then I wouldn't have had a virtual study to do this filming. Now, of course, when you order the kit of parts, you have two options. You can either have the body pre-fitted, or you can have the body just basically placed onto the chassis, even if you're taking it all in one go. Now, the advantages of body pre-fit, and I've covered this before, is all those body panels are going to be perfectly aligned. All the hinges are going to be correctly installed. All those latches for when the doors close or when the clamshells close, all are going to be pinpoint accuracy. Next question. Is there a flappy paddle option for the Ultima RS? Well, the answer is no. Simple as that. This vehicle has been designed with an analog mindset. And I've explained this in previous videos, but the whole concept is you have a 6-speed transaxle with a stick. It makes the car raw. It makes the car completely controllable. And yep, the changes probably take a little bit longer than the little paddles, but does that slow this car down? Not one iota. This thing, when it launches, when it digs in, I tell you what, you will have not experienced acceleration like it. Right, next question. Oh, Roofy Doof, what do you want? How do you keep this car in good condition? Now, what that question was really focused on is when I'm building the car in here, my RS, it looks like a piece of art. I dust it, I keep it, actually it's under a car cover at the moment. But when you get it on the road, when you're out there in the wet, in the salt, in the wind, in the sun, you may think that it could really go downhill very quickly, but fear not, it does not. So my GTR that I built 20 years ago, and mind you that was 20 years ago, I used that car for a year, put about 3,000 or 4,000 miles on it, and I used it to commute to work. I left it parked outside, I drove it in the rain. Yeah, it did live in a garage, but I used that car. And at the end of the year, because I looked after it, it was as good as the day I built it. And this is for several very good reasons. Firstly, components from Ultima, the vast majority of them come with very good corrosion resistance. The chassis, the wishbones, all powder coated. High quality cast aluminium items such as the wheels, such as the brake caliper brackets, all of those come in anodized aluminium. And of course the bodywork is composite, that doesn't corrode. All the carbon fiber, neither does that. So the only components on the car which are really open to the elements and could potentially corrode is some of the aluminium sheet that was used to make the passenger compartment. Now the thing is, when aluminium oxidizes, you tend to get like this white powdery substance on it. And the thing is, that is very easy to control. It's not like rust that is really hard to get rid of. All you need to do is have a slightly acidic cleaner. You can even use just lemon juice in water and smooth it over any white deposit and it vanishes straight away. So my answer is, not a problem at all. Clean it well, keep it in a beautiful garage, and it will deliver you years and years of amazing service. Next question. What have you got next now? Why don't you fit larger brakes? This made me laugh. One particular person, I hope you don't mind me shouting you out, RS on YouTube, said he had an Audi RS6. Serious respect, those are amazing cars. And his car had bigger discs, I can't remember the size of them, but they had 10 piston calipers. 10. I was getting all very excited over 6. Now, in response to that, the first thing I'd say, the reason that RS6 needs those huge, and I mean these must be huge calipers, is the thing weighs over twice as much as the Ultima RS. Yep, it's a heavy old bird. Amazing car. I wouldn't take anything away from it. Also, I could fit bigger brakes into those wheels. I could, because they're huge 19-inch rims. However, AP Racing worked with Ultima to actually develop the braking system for this specific car. The type of rubber it had clad on those beautiful rims, the weight of the vehicle, how the weight was distributed on the vehicle, the type of speeds you would experience when you're trying to brake. So the pads and the calipers and the size and the style of the discs were designed specifically for the RS. So for me, I'm more than happy with my gargantuan discs and calipers. So there you go. Maybe not the biggest, but for this car, it's the best. Okay, more of a technical question now. Someone has emailed me and said, when you're building the car, you talk about bolts and set screws. What's the difference? Well, it's just something I learnt being an engineer, that a bolt has basically a head, a plain length, a shank, and then it has a threaded portion at the bottom. I'll put a picture up there of a bolt for you. A set screw is very similar, but the thread goes all the way up to the head. And there's a picture of one there. Now, set screws and bolts are used for different purposes when you are building a car or building anything. And what you'll see is, as I'm building, what I try and do is I try and be very accurate in how I talk about fasteners, because fasteners are important. Final question. And this time the question is for you out there. Now, the next video, I'm going to reveal what colour of bodywork I've chosen for my RS and also the power plant I've chosen. Now, I know there have been a lot of you out there trying to guess, especially on social media, but what I'm saying is, give me a guess in the comments below. Engine choice and colour choice. And then in the next episode, those of you that have got one or two of those questions correct, I'm going to give you a shout out. And there we go. Another episode complete. I hope you've enjoyed it. I know some of you might have wanted more spannering and less Q&A, but as I said, I'm running out of things to do until she gets the bodywork fitted. Well, on that note, all I'm going to say is take care, drive carefully, and happy spannering.
Live your life within the moment, and don't go wait until the morning. You never know when it is over.